Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Rich Revolutionaries podcast. Today, I am joined by another very special guest. Today, we have Karina, and I'm going to let her introduce herself and share your last name because I don't want to butcher it, and who
Really
you are, what
difficult.
you do, your magic in the world. The stage is yours.
Yes, hi. Thank you for having me here. I'm Karina Schuil, you can also say.
Mhm.
Dutch name. I'm from the Netherlands. I have been living for the past 25 years in Amsterdam with my family. I have three children, teenagers by now. I've always loved traveling a lot, so I did travel a lot after my studies and yeah, worked on cruise ships, worked at Club Med, had my own travel agency, booking five-star luxury group travel and backpacking by myself and staying in forest on the ground floor of a cave. And I loved the combination of the two, both worlds combined. And after about 13 years that I had my own event and incentive agency traveling the world with a business partner, I kept on feeling that I needed to follow my deeper mission more and more. And it took me a while. It took me, I think, about 3 or 4 years. And I was like, what is my mission? I know that I'm here to be of service in the shift of humanity that is taking place and that will take place. That was around 2000, well, obviously 2012. So I felt that opening, and I've always known that I was here for something deeper. So
Mhm.
at first, I tried to bring that into my corporate business. I mean, I was an individual, independent business, but I worked in the corporate world. So I tried to bring work happiness and consciousness in the business world, which was not a feat. I mean, 12 years back, not many people were open to it, at least not in the Netherlands. People are here very grounded and very serious and very, they only believe facts. They don't believe in things they cannot see. So
Mhm.
I've always been a pioneer, always been too early. So actually, working in happiness at work made me unhappy. So I decided to full on stop. And I've done that several times in my life. Like, just stop. If you don't know it anymore, just quit and
Mhm.
trust that the universe will throw something bigger
Mhm.
in place. So I started coaching, helping people from my own experience of life.
Mhm.
And that, yeah, it was much more aligned with me. And that's been 8 years now. So I'm helping, first, I was helping people more step into their inner power and let go of all the beliefs and all the conditioning. And
Mhm.
now I've moved onward and elevated myself. Of course, you grow as you run your business, and that is also the beauty of having your own business. You get to reinvent yourself over and over. So I recently rebranded my company to Karina Quantum Mastery and dedicated myself to helping people with their purpose, especially high capacity women that know that the old methods and the old ways of doing business, of working, of health, of living are no longer sufficient and no longer fulfilling and no longer working, and trying to make the quantum tangible. Because I kept on coming back to the quantum myself every time I was diving into subjects and finding that that space that connects consciousness to science.
Mhm.
Every time I found the answers in the quantum. So here I am as Karina Quantum Mastery, helping women, coaches, and therapists as well to work with the quantum realm to get tangible, practical tools, not the spiritual fluff that we find so much out
Mhm.
there. I'm very grounded myself, but also high in consciousness. But we need to do it here on the planet in
Mhm.
practical terms, build our lives, build our or work or communities. But there's a different paradigm arising, and I think we need different systems. So I'm all about that.
Oh, I love it. Thank you for that like full spectrum of your evolution. I'm gonna dive deeper into different parts so we can really unpack like how you transform through these different phases of your life and what that means for like the higher mission. So let's bring it back to when you were working in luxury travel. You're experiencing this like polarity of selling these big packages for people and then doing your backpacking thing. What was like a line in the sand moment when you were in those worlds that made you do what you said, like quit it and move on to the next thing without necessarily knowing what the next thing is? Is there a moment that you can remember where you really like finally dropped the corporate model?
Well, I kept on waiting for the world to be ready for what it had to offer. And at
Mm,
one point, that felt um, too tight. I think that is
mm,
it. And I saw it when I was speaking to board members. They were the visionaries. They could go along with my topics and what I wanted to bring into their businesses. But then they said, okay, let's do this project. I had to work with middle management people, and they were
mm,
usually so stuck still in the system.
mm,
I can remember one point, maybe that is the point that you're asking about, that we were organizing an event for 500 people around Brené Brown's thought field. So, yeah,
familiar.
daring to do whatever, and it was also about taking self responsibility.
Mm.
So I organized this event. We were going to walk on fire with 500 people. We did that actually. It was amazing. But
Crazy.
with the road to there, with working with these people, the same old people in that field that didn't want to budge. And we were speaking about self responsibility of people. They had a team of people selected that were cooperating with us, the agency. And we said, let's organize an event where people can decide whatever they do for themselves. I mean, we won't set up a room. We'll just not put the chairs anywhere. We just let the people come in and let them pick their own place. Let them decorate their own room. Let them just really
Mm.
think like, oh, what the fuck is going on here? I've never, you always expect there to be chairs. They're always like everybody looking in the same direction. You
Mm,
know what they say in the corporate world? Like, we all need to have our noses in the same direction. Well, I don't believe that.
mm,
So that broke open the conversation. So we had
mhm,
this decision point like, okay, let's do that. And then the middle management layer said like, okay, yeah, the team came up with this, the internal corporate team, they came up with this, but I don't know if we should let them. And if
mm,
the board doesn't agree, we're not going to do that. And I told them, like, how is this possible? We're having an event about, self ownership, bringing the ownership back to the people. And now they take the lead. And now you're going to tell them, like, no, if they don't like it higher up, we're not going to do it. And I was like, I can't do this any longer. And then at
mhm,
the event, yeah, we had 500 people capacity to do the firewalking and do beautiful things. And only two or maybe 250, 300 were doing their thing. They were actually participating. And I was
mm,
like, I just can't work with people anymore that are being forced to do things that they don't want by themselves. I desire to work with people who choose they want change themselves. I told the board director, I told them, like, you really have an issue here because you have 300 people participating and 200 are sitting, they're sitting like this. Like, they really didn't want to. They were like, it was in their physics. And it was just, the bad people there. And I said, it's ruining your company. It's ruining your future plans. And he said, yeah, I know. So what are we going to do about it? You can coach them, he told me. And
mhm,
now I would have grasped that opportunity, but right then I wasn't yet a coach. I didn't feel secure.
mhm,
So I was like, yeah, okay, I just don't think I can do this and work in this field anymore. So I'm just going to do it for myself. And
mhm,
then I followed spiritual entrepreneurship course. And there it dawned me actually that I was keeping myself back by me having thoughts about other people being further ahead than I was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I learned there that we all have a voice. And yes, sure, there's so many successful people already out there, but
Mm-hmm.
some people need to hear it in your voice, or what I call currently, they need your frequency.
Mm-hmm.
They can
Absolutely.
buy all the big coaches, go to all the big programs, have been speaking to many people, but sometimes it's your frequency, your voice, your harmonics that bring it in a way that only then they can understand. And that's why we're here. So that has actually become part of my message to other entrepreneurs to just go with what comes through. And if it keeps on coming through for you, if it keeps on returning to you, there's something you need to do with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially now we see like the coaching and mentorship market is just so saturated. People that are newer in the space can think, well, like, oh, it's already been done, or oh, like there's no space for me. But really, that's just scarcity conditioning. And there is like infinite space for everyone's voice to be heard by the people that it is meant for them. Like our lived experiences, both in this like linear life timeline and like the quantum of all of the parallel lives, contribute to that like significantly unique energetic blueprint that comes through in the frequency of our voice, that comes through in the perspective of our stories, that comes through our embodiment and like the nonverbals that we're transmitting as well. And so I love that you're speaking to that point and that is also contributed to that shift from the corporate model and in the way that you are going to be able to serve people who want to make that shift. Like you said, you work with a lot of therapist professionals in that way. And I can imagine that your background in corporate space contributes to a shared understanding of the world that they're operating inside of and how to interface with it with this new like quantum perspective, you know? And like something that's unique about me is I've like, yes, I worked as a flight attendant, but I've never really worked in a corporate structure before. So I have that like different flavor that I am like just so far removed from the reality of corporate. So the people that I work with naturally want to create something that is like a completely different structure. And I know you do some of that work too. So we're gonna get into that as well.
You said
Um,
something interesting when you were speaking about embodiment as well,
Go
because
ahead.
yes, there's many people in the coaching space, in the transformational space, many, but not all of them have the embodiment, and that is the ones that will survive this what is coming next for humanity, because we need that embodiment, we need that humanness. And I didn't even want to call myself a coach because I've actually always hated the word.
Right?
Because a coach is, in my opinion, somebody who always knows better, because I've been studying for it and you haven't. So I've like, I have this model, I have this method, and I'm going to like put that blueprint on you. But like you
Yeah.
said, we have our own unique blueprint, and everything we need is already within us. So it's more about pulling that out and making that visible. And that's my quantum work also, making people see what they cannot see yet, and then
Hmm.
embodying it. And that's much more important than all the qualifications or whatever you can get.
Yeah, absolutely. The thread of what you said there to me sounds like this dissolution of the hierarchical structure of like teacher and student and walking like together and like wisdom weaving rather than I'm the one that has all the answers, like pay me and then you'll have all the answers too to do it my way, follow a specific recipe, follow a specific rule book. And I think that world of information transfer in that way is like dissolving for a lot of us, especially those who identify as New Earth leaders or wild visionaries, like I like to say in my world, or even like the people that feel ahead of their time. That's like a common archetype that I see in these spaces. It's like you may have future visions that are coming through, but there's no mistake in the timing of it, right? The work lies in our willingness to build the capacity to receive the projections, to receive the distortions, to receive the rejection over and over and over again as we're anchoring more of that truth of this, what I like to call an ancient future, into our embodied lived experience so that we're actually shifting the reality around us through our relationships rather than having these ideas that are still kind of like in the ethers floating around us. But then when we're showing up in our business, when we're showing up in our relationships, when we're showing up in how we're orchestrating our life architecture, really business included in that, it's still replicating this old paradigm, then that's going to create a big incoherence, right? And I'd love to hear your perspective on how you guide people to clear those frequency mismatches essentially to create more capacity. And if you frame it in a different way, please like reframe it for us too.
Yeah, I guess I've always had a very particular way of seeing things. My perception is really sharp, and it's something that I've only started owning the past few years. And that is programming in me as well, in my wounded self, my wounded younger self, uh, that I wouldn't allow myself to see that as my gift. But I have
Mm-hmm.
this gift. And I've always seen distortions everywhere in the corporate world, but then again, in the spiritual world. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't even like to speak about spirituality anymore. It's like it's consciousness. It's
Mm-hmm.
within the spiritual realm. I saw the same patterning as I saw in the corporate world, but then manifested in a different way, spoken in a different way. Like these people that keep on um, postponing. And they say,
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, I feel it's not aligned yet. It can be, of course, it can be. I feel things if they're aligned or not. But sometimes
Mm-hmm.
we become so high up in the ether and we're working so much with the spiritual realm that we forget that we have to put it down here on earth in the clay.
Mm-hmm.
We keep on making excuses from this spiritual identity becomes who we are, and we're no longer taking action. And that was actually the reason I shifted into my business now, is because I was working with a lot of visionary new earth people, and I guided everybody by the hand. That's my gift, but it's also my shadow, that it burned me out because I was attracting not the right kind of people. I was attracting the people that had the vision of a beautiful new earth, that wanted to create things and build things, but they never did. They never actually did. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
different kind of people. It's the kind of people that says, "Oh no, I don't want money because money is evil, or there's being bad things done with money." Yeah, that's true. But money is an energy, and you can bend it. It's not even real. We can do everything with money. We can use it for the bad, and we can use it for the good. And why not
Mm-hmm.
use it as we are here? We are here on the 3D, 4D Earth, and if we want to bring uh, new realities here, we will actually need to build them. And for that, we need capacity. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how I came to work with capacity more, because of my own experience with people, my frustration. I'm a generator, right? So I get frustrated easily. And I was community building. I'm a 2-4, all about building community.
Mm-hmm.
But not for everyone, for the ones that know, feel, and see. So I was able to build a beautiful community, but they kept on looking at me. But I can't
Mm-hmm.
take you by the hand the whole time. I mean, you need to take action, and I can show you what action to take. I can tell you what is needed. I can ask you to look within yourself, what you see is needed. But if you don't do it, I just can't help you, and I don't want to help you anymore. So I started unraveling all these patterns for other people by myself, and I saw things. But about 6 years ago, I felt like I need something to make tangible um, the quantum, because I can see things, but I cannot people are so left brain, sometimes they need to see it for themselves.
Mm,
And so I asked, like, bring me a tool that, puts the quantum really in our hands. And that's when I asked for this, and about 2 weeks later, I had a frequency technology in my hand that I work with up till this day that actually dives into the difference, the bridge. No, I'm the bridge in the work, but it's the gap between desired reality and current reality. And we all
mm,
know that if we want to be a creator, we have to be the predominant creative force in our lives. But our
mhm,
energy usually goes back to these beliefs, these thoughts, these programs that keep on running in our heads, and why we just cannot bypass our beliefs, I think, because they're
mhm,
so deeply, deeply grounded in ourselves. And I see that with my quantum frequency technology, because I make analyses of people and I can actually look into their energy and see what patterns are running the show. And I
mm,
use my own perception and intuitive work and energy work. It all combines. But I kept on seeing these patterns that are in the energy. It's not
mhm,
drive. People have to drive, people have the vision. Sometimes they cannot see beyond like the first step and they think that is it, but it can be much bigger. But in making visible, like this pattern is actually coming from your parents, grandparents, great grandparents. I always feel in my body, whether that's left sided, right sided energy, like it's whether it's in the mother's line or the father's line. But I can actually
mm,
show them a report like here. It says that the reason you have a difficulty making choices in your business is coming from a pattern with your grandparents or great grandparents because they
mm,
had difficulty making decisions. So
mm,
that pattern, they got it from somewhere and it moved into the family line. So the parents had traces of that pattern of the grandparents. So you are being brought up with that same pattern, but you don't even realize that it's there because it's not
mm.
yours. And I can
Exactly.
make these things really visible for people. And that's really valuable.
Yeah.
Or things like having to choose between the love for a father or a mother. That comes literally out of my reports, and then people cry and they know. And once we see things, once the unconscious becomes conscious, that is when
Mhm,
we can uh, transmute it and actively choose something different. But if
mhm,
you keep on saying to yourself, like, oh, that was the divorce of my parents way back, I've done so much work on it, I don't have a problem with that anymore. You keep on going ahead, but you keep on having these issues, in this case with having to choose between two parents. It's still influencing you on the energetic level.
yeah.
And if you keep on bypassing it by saying, no, I've been there, I've already solved this, but you're not, that is what becomes the block because you can't see it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, those different levels of perception are so fascinating to drop into. It's like intellectually we'll have these protective mechanisms of our identity, of how we see ourselves, that's blocking us from going into the like unconscious terrain where those like family, society, and cultural programs are still running. And the energetic patterns that I often track in my work is like the victim, the martyr, and the savior, and how those manifest on the different levels. And we can get more specific like that with like witch wound or like colonial wound or mother father wound, getting more specific into what it is. But no amount of awareness is going to make the shift for you. It's a matter of actually bringing it into the body, feeling that pattern, and then making a different choice, shifting the energy through the body to be able to take on a different shape, to be able to transform the identity. And that's the fundamental like needle mover in our business, in our collective evolution, and all of our relationships. And I really would love to hear the thread of how you weave that into your work as someone that you shared right before we started recording comes from a small economically challenged region of the world in northern Netherlands to now building systems that are a new era of economics. What has that transformation looked like for you? What are some of the moving pieces that could be supportive for people to hear? And I'm sure you're also supporting people in your world make these shifts for themselves.
Yeah, it was interesting. It's kind of funny to say that I live in one of the poorest parts of the country when the Netherlands is by itself quite a prosperous country. But we
Mm,
have one part in the north which is indeed quite poor, and you have these things on the news, these items every year. It's like the poorest country of the top three of the poorest villages in the country, and it's always mine. That is one, two, or three. So I, as a young child, I already had that pattern recognition. So I could already feel like this is not in alignment with who I am. And
mm,
I was brought up in a family, well, I think my parents did their best. And I know my father loved me a lot. I know my mother as well, but she ran into a lot of like, she was the victim for most of her life. She still
mhm,
is.
mhm,
My father was like the force in the house, like the dominant force. And from frustration from his own life, where things were never anything, nothing worked out for him. So he's really frustrated man, but
mhm,
very loving as well. These things can exist in one person, but let's say I wasn't abused, but and also it was always like just almost there. Like the number
mhm,
of times I had to run from the house in order to be safe, I don't know, but it's many times because I actually took on the parentification role as a 6 year old. I can remember when I did that. Until when I was 3, 4, that was not an issue. But after that, I felt like my mother is like clueless. She doesn't, I say this not out of disrespect, but you know this. She just didn't have the capacity, again, the capacity. And I saw that as a young girl. It's like, why is she like that? Why doesn't she stand up for herself? Why doesn't she stand up for us? And I decided, and I actively remember doing that, like, if she's not going to do that, I am going to do that. And I bumped my face on the table. I said, we live in a free country and I get to say whatever I want. And that's how I stood up to him.
mhm,
And I protected my brother, I protected my mother. And that led to a lot of fights with him.
mhm,
He couldn't have that because I was young, and I was like, he needed to have control over us. And even when I
mhm,
grew up, when I was 13, he had to sell his business. Otherwise, he would go bankrupt. So we ended up on social welfare, which is not a nice thing. If you just started high school and you're the only one wearing homemade jeans, it's horrible to wear homemade jeans. I mean, people can see it, right? And it's I don't feel bad at all about all of these things, but at that time I wasn't not really like yeah, I couldn't join the school trips. They all went to Paris and I couldn't because I didn't have the money. I went the year after when I had my job, in the weekend. And then I went the year after all my other schoolmates because I wanted to go anyway. But yeah, it was, I grew up with having this feeling, and it was also every time spoken out loud by my mother that this is not for our kind of people. That,
mhm,
and I always felt like, why not? I'm here for great things. I want to travel. I feel that I have a big mission. I feel that I'm going to have all these things and I'm going to
mhm,
make sure I'll get them. So at a very young age, I decided to make life happen the way I wanted it. So I couldn't move out of the house fast enough. I even took like a switch in my high school education. So I'd finish a year earlier so I could start my hotel school education because that was my way out. I thought
mhm,
there I will learn how to be elegant and well spoken and well behaved and international. And so that's what I did. And then I started traveling and I was like, bingo, I've made it. right? It was
Mhm.
like early 20s. But during that hotel school education, imagine like lots of children with parents that are well off coming
Mhm.
to the graduation in their big cars, and there my parents were driving in a very old Russian car, and I was like so ashamed. And on the
Mhm.
outside, nobody would notice this.
Mhm.
Nobody would notice my insecurity, but I felt so insecure around these other children. But I kept on not faking till you make it. That's not it.
Asking.
I just I just took a stance. I'm going to be this person that is successful. I'm going to be this person that fits into this world. That is what I felt. And I just
Mhm.
did. But on the inside I felt so insecure.
Mhm.
So I started working uh on myself, or yeah, at a really young age. And at the same time, I also had these interests that were not common, like other teenagers had. I was interested in reincarnation and in all things that we couldn't explain from a young age. So that was something that I was just my background hobby. I didn't really speak about it. So I was seeing all these different layers of reality already, and um, but the most important thing I saw is that because I had to take responsibility for who I wanted to become, and I did, but other people didn't. And that is what I noticed at a young age. And also, when I started working, wanting to travel, I had a beautiful job at a travel agency. And I wanted to go away for half a year together with my partner. And he had this big corporate job, so he could take like paid leave for half a year. And I had to quit my job. I was like, okay, if I have to quit my job, I'll quit my job because I take responsibility. So I went to my
Mhm.
boss and I said, I'm going to quit my job because I'm going to travel. And she said, oh, that is amazing. If you come back, would you like to have a promotion and become the team leader? I was like, oh, okay. So I learned that when you take a decision and you go for it, better things turn up. So I had always this firm belief. I've always seen it, I've always created it myself. Of course, I didn't know things about creating your reality like we speak about it now. But yeah, I was like, I want to help other people take responsibility for their lives when they're not. People told me like, oh, you're going to travel for half a year, oh, that is so wonderful, I want to do it too. And I told them like, well, why don't you? Yeah, I don't know, I have to do this, and I was like, I don't have any money. I quit my job. Why you can do that too? But people are
Mhm.
so cautious and so afraid to let go. And maybe because I didn't have so much to lose, for me it was
Mhm.
easier. So when I started coaching, it was like, this is what I'm going to help people with. I'm going to help people step into their inner power, their authenticity, because I've done all this work on rebuilding myself. And I
Mhm.
saw so many other women being insecure and feeling small and acting small. And if there's one thing I couldn't have, it's like seeing the greatness. With my perception, I can always see the greatness in people. I can see, I can do sessions with people and I see whole businesses built from their greatness. I can see everything, even if they can't. So it's
Mhm.
like I'm going to, and that is when I started taking people by the hand, which I now don't do anymore. But I wanted to truly like bring them forward. But
Mhm.
I know now that if a person is not self sufficient, if they don't take an active decision, if they're not creators of their own reality, they're not going to budge.
Mhm.
So that was how I came to do this.
Yeah, that's that like that saviordom that comes in with like wanting to pull people up with you, and letting go of that can like come with some grief too, depending on your social circle of who's around you, of letting go of maybe some of those relationships. I know for myself, that's what my journey has looked like, a lot of leaving communities, of leaving jobs, leaving relationships, because that next level of my calling was anchored in a frequency that was incoherent with those relationships. And I want to bring it back to the second part of the question that I asked you about coming into building these. new era wealth systems, and you have a Gathering of the Tribe project. I'd love to hear about how that was initiated, what it is, who it's for, how it works. Share the vision of that with us.
Yes, it actually started when I started working more with social sharing about 5 years back. And I saw the value in that. Like, we have these big corporates selling products. Why not, you know, if we share an Airbnb with somebody or link, or you have read a nice book, you'll share the book with somebody, or when you know a nice restaurant, you share it as well. So why not, businesses, why not help each other grow? And if we buy from each other, we have our own ecosystem, right? So I was very much into that as well. And then I was in a sisterhood mandala, and I saw the beautiful outcome of that, like supporting each other's wealth and growing into wealth together, learning about wealth in a close knit community. And I really like that a lot. And I've always seen these ways of being, especially in business, as well, I call it the Aquarian business model. But many people don't like network marketing, etc.
Mm,
Because, well, I have to buy from somebody. Yeah, well, you'd rather buy from this big corporate and have the
mhm,
commissions go to the top only, but not buy from a network marketing company. And they say, well, it's a pyramid. And I say, well, look at that corporate company. I mean, look at, I don't know, a Netflix or a Sony, or who's the one on top and who's below. It's always a pyramid. Everything is a pyramid. So, and it's usually very good products as well. There's transformational capacities that cannot be found in mainstream companies because they don't want us to, you know, have control over our own health and our own wealth. So I started seeing that, and that's when a wealth project came onto my path, and it's collective wealth building, and it's lawful according to common law. It's lawful. It's on the blockchain, so nobody can run off with your money like that happens. I was in a few sharing circles as well, like these African systems from South Africa, and they have many of these sisterhood circles in the past few years. I lost money in that because somebody didn't respond, received the money without giving back. Well, yeah, that's only half of the system, right? The system is receiving and giving.
mm,
But if we work with people, yeah, things can go wrong. And I've heard a lot of stories of a lot of people that lost money, that build systems like sisterhood systems, and the developer or the owner, whoever, just ran off with the money. There's many stories like that. So when I
mm,
found this project and saw that it was on the blockchain, so nobody can touch the money. You have a
mhm,
contract with the person you bring in, and the contract is directly within seconds. It's between the two persons. And because it works with donations, you build each other's dreams. It's actually
mm,
built according to the Amish, how the Amish help each other community wise. They are building barns, and one family is building a barn, and they ask all the other families in the village, like, can you come help us? And maybe other people outside of the village that are experts with building materials, whatever. And so they gather and they help build one person's barn, in the knowing that if somebody else will build a barn in the following years, they will go there and help. So we
mhm,
are raising digital barns, and it's a one-time donation that you give only to the person that invited you. So you're actually sponsoring their dreams and their bigger vision for another reality, for pension funds, for children that want to go study, for a beautiful eco project they have, raising the community center. We have people on board that are building churches and building childcare centers in Africa. We have one guy from Cambodia. He fled during the Pol Pot regime in the 70s with his parents to the United States. And he always wanted to do something back. So when he came into this project, he started working together with local Cambodians, and they're now building hospitals in Cambodia.
Wow.
So this truly is about bringing dreams into reality. And
Mhm.
I started being interested in this kind of projects because what I saw in my coaching business, when I guided people towards their purpose, they could see their vision, they had big dreams, but money was always the issue. So
Mhm.
what if money can return? I mean, yeah, there's a lot of money in the world, and there's a lot of money. It will all return. There's many things going on. Of course, I'm sure your listeners will know this as well. That there's a complete shift, and it's happening. This is like the 4D in between layer when we're not yet having access to all that abundance and wealth that will be returned to us. We can start building it in the meantime and donate to projects that are really wonderful. One of my friends, she's going to join. She lives in Thailand. She says, "Well, I met this guy through social media, a French guy who is helping children of the Karen tribe in northern Thailand and Myanmar,
Mhm.
and they have wars there going on for years now. So they have lots of orphans. He's helping these orphans by smuggling food and medicine and clothing across the border. What if he would start a project through her, and instead of crowdfunding, all his friends and people that support him would fund his project. They would not only fund his project and he could do better, they would also fund their own dreams. So it's
Mhm.
such a beautiful ecosystem, and I think it's a prelude to what is coming, and like what you are working on in community building. We're
Mhm.
building digital barns.
Mhm. I think the like architecture of what you're speaking to with these like um new wealth models, it's like more circulating wealth rather than like pooling at the top. Well, that's like the village model, right? And we
Village
get to
model.
build our businesses, we get to build our wealth, we get to build our relationships, all in that model that's honoring that like cyclicality of, the flow of energy versus the old paradigm, old world is more linear. It's a like cause and effect. It's like A to B transaction. And when we can become aware of those little shifts that we can make and then compound them into these new systems, that is the building blocks of the new earth. That's how we take these quantum concepts of like we're all one unity consciousness and actually ground it into structures and systems that are organized in a foundation of architecture built on genuine connection and of mutual flourishing. And I love, love, love that you're bringing that into the wealth space because there's so many dreams that are unfunded, family dynamics that get torn apart over money. And it's just like the way that it's been stored, the way that it's been moved is not the only way that's possible. And I love that that's part of the mission that you're serving here.
Will be much bigger because it's not only wealth, it is bringing all these systems together. And I
Mm,
have a bigger vision for that as well. Yeah, it's the compounding of everything, really. Everything we do, all our gifts, all our beautiful, unique ways of being and helping others and being of service combined in one ecosystem so that
mm.
everything flows.
Yes, absolutely. That's like my big mission and reason why is really like anchoring that village model in like a land-based project. And so what you alluded to of what's going on now is kind of the precursor to that is collaborating on other people's land-based projects of food forests, of eco-residential retreat centers. And part of my vision for the one that I will build in community involves like birthing centers and unschooling for children. Because I think like how children are born and raised in communal child rearing instead of the pressure on a nuclear family is going to set them up to anchor the level of consciousness that all children come in with, but all of these conditions from family, society, and culture are distorting that original blueprint. And when we can bring it back to a village model, when we can bring it back to natural birth, and we can bring it back to learning through the elements and nature in, the full range of a community from like children to elders, right? There's so much division of grouping same age children together that, doesn't really make sense. Like telling a child to sit in a chair and like we were talking about before, like nose forward and don't move, don't talk to your neighbors. That's cheating. Like that's not reflective of how to succeed in the real world. That is reflective of conditioning consciousness to be exactly what you're talking about, like have these big dreams but not take action towards them because there's that accumulated learned helplessness from being in these systems. So education.
From the early start, you can see it so much. I would never, I mean, my children are fairly well in the school system. They love it. They love their friends. They love learning to some degree, some more than others. But they're well in the system, but if I would do it again, I would never bring them into a school system. But of
Yeah,
course, I didn't know that all these years back when I started with
yeah.
school, but definitely there's so much more they can reach and learn. And I hear this constantly from families that do homeschool and that do travel. And the children learn so much faster. They don't need all these hours in the school bags.
Mhm.
They don't. They can
And
learn in a
interest
couple of
driven
hours
too,
what they
right? Yeah,
and the
exactly.
way we're learning mathematics, I mean, if you ever seen how a Japanese child learns how to do math, it's completely different. Different. It's more organic. It's
Mhm.
by design where our brains are being hardwired to think linear, and that's the
Exactly.
biggest system. That's the biggest
Yeah.
problem for me because
Yeah. Yeah,
even
that's the narrative.
mathematics are not. Even mathematics is organic and can be done organic.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had a stint of working at a Waldorf school and like they learned mathematics through like cooking or through playing with shapes and stuff like that. And like that's like a step in the right direction. But it's also still within like a Monday to Friday calendar of like, butts in seats. And it's just like everybody's at a different place with their development because these developmental markers of like that are attributed to age and specific competencies and behaviors, just like are arbitrary figures that don't necessarily reflect the biodiversity of child development. And another system that I'm really passionate about revolutionizing is the healthcare system. I've just had like
Yes,
my
me
go with
too.
it. And
Me
so
too.
yeah, we could have a whole other podcast on it, I'm sure. Um, these systems of like government, school, economics, healthcare are all anchoring, yes, linear um, trajectories, pathology of like, and in business we see this too of like there's a problem, provide a solution and exchange funds for it. And it's like it doesn't need to be that way. It can be like we're moving towards desire, we're moving towards possibility. We are insourcing our responsibility for our health. We're insourcing the um the skills and gifts that are already predisposed inside of our energetic template and tending to that with curiosity and imagination and like unconditional love rather than placing all of these conditions on receiving, even in the workforce, your basic needs for your like home, your mortgage, your food, security and safety and belonging, all of these things are outsourced to a system that creates that dependency and that learned helplessness. So the big vision of these eco-residential retreat centers, agri-hoods, the farm project that I go on and on and on about is that remodeling of social cultural systems and providing an alternative that, in my belief, if we're going to try to fight a system with the poison that it has placed on us, like that's not creating any type of forward movement or momentum, right? So trying to like fight the system, trying to protest, like we're not going to really get far. So it's a matter of
Not a trap.
being,
It's not a trap. Yeah, because we keep
yeah,
fighting against instead of bringing our energy and building the new.
exactly. And being in that sovereign creatorship starts in our relationship. It starts in these conversations that we're having of bringing ideas together and then getting organized to take action. So I want to start to close this conversation off on what happens when someone has these big visions and they're taking action and reality starts to reconstruct in their favor. And then we're met at, we can call it an upper limit, an edge of capacity, and suddenly we start collapsing back into the old timeline.
Yes.
What's the
Yes.
mechanism that's at play there, and how can we approach it from a different perspective, a different level of consciousness to actually anchor the frequency of the new timeline that expands capacity?
It is multiple ways, of course, but one I would say is the ego. We have to learn to bypass the ego and not believe our beliefs because
Mm,
the ego will always protect us. So when people reach that level, if they worked hard on their next level and they're almost there, there's
mhm,
usually a collapse. We end up in the void, and the universe is asking us, "Are you sure?" We're being shown like all these things again, and we're like, "Okay, yeah, no, maybe let's leave it. Let's not go there." That's because the ego is trying to protect us. So that's one.
mhm,
And then we have the nervous system that is
mhm,
also trying to protect us. So it's basically our own systems working against us.
mhm,
Because the nervous system, the moment the capacity hits the moment right before we expand, there's all these doubts, all these beliefs, and we go into fight or flight for most people. And I've seen it time and again, people with beautiful missions, beautiful visions, having the capacity to take action, and then they're off. They just disappear. They simply disappear for themselves. For others, they're suddenly out. And
mhm,
it's because they don't recognize, and they're making up all these stories like why
mhm,
they are disappearing, or you don't hear anything. But usually they will tell you, like, yeah, it's not the right timing, it's not this, and it's not that. It's either the ego or the nervous system, or the combination of the two. And when you don't know, you start believing it. So we have to
mhm.
bypass that and know that this is actually normal to
Yeah.
experience this cap. There's no cap, but when you start experience it, to know for yourself, like, okay, this is what I'm experiencing. I have to push through now, or not by pushing, but I have to go forwards because it's just my capacity that has reached its limit. So
Mhm,
these two things, and then we have the physical capacity. And that
mhm,
is what I see a lot of high capacity women run into. So many women, and men probably as well, but I work a lot with women. They are, they have hormonal stuff going on, sleep issues. They have this mental capacity that is capped also. So they're
mhm,
getting tired all the time. And I work on my capacity a lot also biologically, and
mhm,
I'm almost not never tired. I just can go on and on and on because, and I'm a generator, so I have this engine that makes a difference. I have to say that, but I see a lot of generators as well. They're just usually always tired, and I
mhm,
know that their physical capacity is not what it could be, and there's a lot of things we can do. It has to do with your mitochondria. It has to do with glutathione. And there's a lots of things we can do. And then we come back to the health, of course. But there's lots
mhm,
of things you can do. You can raise your capacity by making your cells young and whole again. And within the quantum space, there's loads of capabilities for that as well, lots of possibilities to work on that and to actually raise your physical capacity. So when all three are on par, you hit these caps less frequent.
mhm,
So awareness, what it is, and then the physical capacity, the belief systems, everything we run against. And what did I say again? The fourth one. Um,
Full capacity, nervous system,
yeah,
ego.
nervous system as well. So these four, I would say, are all responsible. And we're meant to expand. And expansion cannot go without a bit of tension. I mean,
Yeah.
the old saying that if your dream doesn't feel scary, it's probably not big enough.
Yeah, exactly. And I love to work with the dark feminine archetype. And so I'm looking at all of the emotions that are generally exiled from society, like fear, rage, shame, and grief. And I think that a lot of our capacity is maxed out from avoiding actually feeling those emotions. And like you said, with like if
Ego
you're
protecting again. The ego
yeah,
doesn't want you to
exactly.
feel these things. And
Yeah.
if that's the fifth thing is actually the willingness to
Hmm.
dive into those shadows. It's really important. But also to, yeah, instead of like the whole transformational space is still based on like transcending emotions. Yeah, we need to dive into them. We need to really move through them, feel them. And only when you've lived through the emotion can you resolve it. But it's also not staying stuck in there. Just whenever these archetypes come up in yourself, whenever these blockages come up, just refer them back to the original wound and just recognize it. And it's like, oh, this is my witch wound, or this is my child wound, or this is my this or that, and then just greet it and say, I recognize you, I see you, but I choose to move beyond. You're safe now, and then just go. But
Yeah.
it takes practice, and it takes a lot of knowledge of yourself, and a lot of um, the desire to keep on expanding regardless of how difficult it can be. We could speak for
Yeah.
hours about this, more into this.
Yeah, that shift from like rooting into the fear through the avoidance of it to rooting into the desire and still allowing the fear to be there. But in my world, like we work with fear and all the other emotions that I mentioned in a way that it's all energy, right? So when we drop the categorization of like good or bad emotions and we're like, okay, this is energy that I get to work with. How can I take this energy that is big, big, powerful energy of fear and shift that into action, into a different direction, into a different like texture that actually becomes the catalyst for fulfillment of desire. And I have so many stories of how I've done that, how clients of mine have done that in their businesses and their relationships in their life. And this is what I do inside of my spaces. And so I need to wrap up this conversation, but I feel like we could go on for ages. So maybe we'll do another one. We'll definitely stay in touch. And as a closing remark, I want to give you the stage to, sorry, the dogs. It'll be cut out in edit, but I want to give you the stage to share with people where they can get connected with you and anything that you're inviting people into.
Well, I have to think about that. Well, whatever resonated with you, whether that is indeed the quantum work, the perception work, the frequency work, um, and the capacity work. I have my containers, the quantum capacity reset, which is actually grounding all these things biologically, to raise your capacity on a biological level. But there will also be space for breaking through mental blocks, mindset, uh, the I'm confused now because I didn't expect that question. Can you cut this out?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, can I start over?
Yeah. So
Um,
what spaces are you inviting
I have
people?
my quantum capacity reset, which is a beautiful 3 month trajectory where you can experience the frequencies, but also the biologic capacity grounding. within the body. It's not a program that you do and that takes you a lot of time. It's something that runs in the background, something that you take in the background, something that you receive in the background, but that really studies your capacity of the physical body, and yeah, all the things that come with that, the emotions, the hormonal balance, the uh, stress and sleep, all these things that yeah, we can use to raise a capacity. And if you're interested also in the collective wealth project, whatever resonated with you, you can reach me at Karina underscore Quantum Mastery on Instagram, and my website karinaquantummastery.com. And thank you for listening.
Yeah, and we'll have all of that linked in the show notes there so you can get connected. Thank you for being here, for sharing your stories, your wisdom, your energy, your presence. And thank you also to the listeners for tuning in. As always, if you have any questions, any insights, any breakthroughs, any triggers, bring it to either myself or Karina. We love to keep the conversation flowing beyond this podcast. So thank you again, and we'll see you in an episode soon.